So hello again, and welcome to another quick coffee moment with me, Kristen Forster. I thought this morning I'd start by telling you about Creme Puff. So Creme Puff was a cat who lived to 38 years and about 3 months, and I can't remember how many days. So Creme Puff is actually the oldest living cat ever recorded. But actually, there must be something about the owner of the cat, because he owned a very long-lived cat, who I think was at the time, for a period, was the oldest officially recorded cat in the world as well. So he was asked about the secret of his cat's longevity. It turned out he had a special diet. So Creme Puff did eat normal cat food, normal dry stuff, but he started every morning with a cup of coffee, or a saucer of coffee. Coffee with cream, apparently, not my style, but that's the way he liked it. And he did have a few other special things as well. Turkey bacon, they call it. I don't actually know what turkey bacon is. I presume it's turkey strips that are kind of cured like bacon to give it that flavour, but why bother? Just go for bacon and coffee. And actually, perhaps the really unusual one is he had a pipette of red wine every 2 days, living by the biblical principle of a little wine for his stomach's sake, obviously. So anyway, he's a very long-lived cat. But the strange thing is, it's not just cats who kind of receive long life from drinking coffee. It's actually kind of been proven that you live longer if you drink lots of coffee. Well, not lots of coffee. If you drink an average amount of coffee, kind of a cup or two a day, that's max. And it kind of reduces things like cardiovascular problems and all sorts of other stuff. They can show you why. So all of those things just kind of inch up your life expectancy. So I'm going for 100, which means I'm just over halfway there. It's all downhill now, isn't it? Anyway, so what's the point of all that? Not much. Just always like to start with a quick coffee fact. What I thought I'd think about today was what Jesus was on about when he goes on and talks about the green eye. Well, he doesn't talk about the green eye. He talks about the good eye and the evil eye. That kind of idea that Jesus introduces actually in the Gospel several times. It's there in the Sermon on the Mount and the Sermon on the Plain, as we refer to it in Luke. But actually, it's the kind of the core ethical teaching that Jesus as a rabbi is giving his disciples. It's for those who are really serious in their faith, and he addresses it right up front. Talks about if your eye is good, then your whole body is full of light. If it's evil, then what hope have you got? Because even the light is dark. And then there's a time also in the Gospels, in his parables, where he's talking to the crowds. It's the one about the generous employer. He hires people during the day, and then there's a point during the day where he pays more for some of those who came in halfway through the day, and people complain. And interestingly, there Jesus kind of turns it around in the voice of the person paying. He said, "What if I'm generous with what I've got to pay for those the same that I gave to you because they haven't had the same opportunity? Then why is it that you see? Why is my goodness make your eye evil?" And he really hits on something. Because this idea that is there in Jesus' teaching is not unique to Jesus in the ancient world, but Jesus picks up on it very solidly. So he makes it part of the Sermon on the Mount. So it's part of something we should all take on board. It's part of what he teaches to the crowds in parables, so it's something that they can relate to too. Because in the ancient world, they recognised that the perspective people had on life hugely affected what they saw in it and what they got back out of it. If they saw the world as mean and unkind, that tends to be what they got out of it. If they saw the world, cynically, it was kind of like choosing death. "I put before you today," says God in the Old Testament. He puts the law in front of the children of Israel, life or death. So choose life, it goes well. And that ancient kind of wisdom that say, well, they look at the eye, they notice right in the middle of the eye, you've got a little black spot. And you've got kind of little threads that work out through the pupil of the eye, and different people have different patterns. And it became a kind of a metaphor, a way of saying that people saw the world differently. Some people had a generous eye, and they saw grace and goodness all over the place where they looked, and others had a mean and evil eye. And they just saw it doesn't matter, you could show them the same things, and they would see it totally differently. Someone once said to me, I'm not just a glass half full person. If the glass is half empty, I'm kind of excited that there's room to fill up. And that can sound kind of like, just naive and stupid and trivial. But it's fascinating that modern psychology has actually demonstrated that if you feel blessed, you actually do better in life. Actually, they also say if you feel lucky you're blessed, secular equivalent of the spiritual kind of principle. But actually that sense of how you frame the world, and that is a choice, that's something we get into a habit about. If our habit is to frame the world in terms of what's going wrong, well, you can always find what's going wrong. And that then starts to dominate. And so then what happens is it actually creates a response in the brain that it allows for actually less speculative connections. It makes you less creative. I do apologise, that's my BBC News app on my phone telling me something's happening in the world. I have no idea what. We'll chat that later. But coming back to that concept that it shuts down kind of the free ranging association, which is key to things like creativity and opportunity. So you stop seeing the world that way when you've made choices to frame things in the negative. And that's a real challenge, and it's so fascinating that in this ancient world, which doesn't have the benefits of kind of systematized testing and so on, but Jesus comes in and right at the foundation of being a disciple, he says, you've really got to get your eye good. You've got to start framing the world and seeing the blessing. You can always choose to see the negative if you want to, but you will do a lot worse, because if your eye is like that, if that's how you see the world, then even the light you have somehow is spoiled. So, I'm laughing. It's actually a very serious point. And something that we have to take on board, because increasingly we are being trained by the media to look for the problem. Even when things are going well, that's not a good story. So we're going to reframe it in terms of what could have happened. If you look at the world and judge it by perfection, then you're always going to be disappointed. But equally, you're also going to become very arrogant in your own position, because we just can't help it. If we judge the world against perfection, we end up believing we ourselves are perfect when we're not. If you look at the world and say, look how well people are trying, look at the great opportunities that they make for themselves, look at how they took a bad situation and somehow produced good in it, and we can celebrate those things. And then we can be grateful for those things. If we can frame our lives with gratitude for what we've got, rather than resentment for what we don't have, then in actual fact, we do far better in this life, let alone the life to come. So those are my thoughts this morning as we think about Creme Puff, the world's longest lived cat, and his special diet, which includes coffee, red wine, good, and turkey bacon. So maybe I should make that my breakfast each morning. Interesting.